Good to see you.
You too.
I was thinking about just you, which I do every day, and I guess it was Shane's story. I saw that the Broadway play was nominated for Tony. Is that right? A
Yes.
Tony? I'm not in. I don't know that world.
Yeah, we didn't either when it started. We actually, ultimately, we got nominated for 9 Tonys.
Wow.
I know. Which one of those nominations was mine and Shane, but most people that aren't in that world just think we were nominated for 9 Tonys.
Got it. So the musical.
The musical was
nominated for 9.
9 Tonys, which was pretty incredible. I mean, I think the most nominated musical was maybe 12 or 13.
This year?
Yeah. So we were in there. We were, in amongst the most nominated. We had 1 win, which was great.
Oh, it's over now.
Yeah.
So you won though.
Well, Alex Newell won.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, our show won.
Yeah, but you wrote all the music for the show, right?
We did, yes.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm going to start saying. Yeah, we did write the music, so I guess we did win that Tony.
What is it called again?
Shucked.
Musical. A musical.
A
so you
musical.
wrote the music for the musical.
Yes, we wrote the music for the musical.
That's so cool. How did you guys even have somebody reach out, or did you guys? I don't even know what to ask about Shucked because I don't know what it is.
So I can tell you the journey. It's a great story. So it started. It was over 10 years from when we started to when it opened.
Wow.
Yes. So, and this is what's crazy. I had made 12 stories, but it didn't have a home. I was doing a showcase for Rounder Records. And so we had a meeting for Shucked to interview. And so I was like, oh, we got to, I hope the meeting's on time because I got to get to this showcase. That's how long ago it was. And basically, Gaylord, or Opry, owned the rights to Hee Haw.
Yes.
They still do.
And I've been through a couple iterations of that, but I know that from working with them personally, yes.
So they wanted to musicalize Hee Haw. And Steve Buchanan, at the time, was running the Opry in Nashville. And he hired a book writer named Robert Horn. And for those of you that don't know musical theater, a book writer writes all the spoken dialogue.
So they're called a book writer. I don't know musical theater,
I didn't
so
know
I'm
that
learning.
either.
Okay.
When they said a book writer, I thought Stephen King.
Yes, same. Judy Blume is where my mind went, but okay.
Yeah. And so he hired Robert Horn, and Robert had been working on it for about a year and had an outline. And Robert felt very strongly that the music should be written by Nashville songwriters and not Broadway composers. So he wanted to come to Nashville and choose the team to write it. And so he interviewed several teams that day, and he chose Shane and myself. And
This is 10 years ago?
yeah. And so I always measure it by Shane's kids because they're 10. They were born in Palm Springs. I flew out to Palm Springs to meet them when they were a couple days old. Robert Horn lives in L.A. He drove down to Palm Springs, showed us that first. We already had seen the outline, but he started kind of talking us through how to write a musical. And so those kids were born in December. The first writing appointment of that next year, which would have been 2023 or 2013, we started writing. And we wrote for Hee Haw for a while. Hee Haw didn't test well with Broadway audiences. And so then it was changed to Moonshine.
The name?
Yeah.
Obviously the name and the brand, if you don't know the brand, the name's not going to work for you.
Yes.
That's why. It did seem too like hillbilly.
I guess so. And that was something Shane and I really fought for. We loved the idea of taking Hee Haw to Broadway. And we loved just the way the title looked and sounded. We actually loved everything that was going against it. But we got outvoted. So then it became Moonshine, that Hee Haw musical. We opened it in Dallas with the hopes of it going to Broadway. It didn't. We got very mixed reviews. It kind of got scrapped. And then Robert Horn, once again, our book writer, won a Tony for Tootsie. He wrote the book for Tootsie. And when that happened, he had all this interest of, what do you want your next show to be? And he said he wanted it to be this. And so we got at that point, Steve Buchanan was no longer at Opry. We got a new producer, new director. The Opry, we had to get the underlying rights from the Opry, which we did. And we just started over. It was, other than Shane and Robert and myself, and it became Shucked.
Did you rewrite every song?
Most of them. There are 2 songs that were in that Dallas production that are still in the show.
When you say mixed reviews for the Dallas production, what did the best review say that you can remember? Paraphrasing.
I don't remember because I kind of try to stay away from them. probably that it was funny and that the music was catchy. The worst reviews said that I'll remember those, that our leading lady was a dim bulb. I remember that really bothered me. And so when we started over, to me, it became really important for her to not come across as dumb. Because
did you think that was it wasn't her, the actress?
Never the actress.
It was her character that was a dim bulb?
Yes.
And they were talking about the character more than got it.
And that it was, that original version, it played a lot on some old stereotypes that, I'm glad that version didn't go to Broadway because I'm from a small town. Our setting is Cobb County. To me, that's where I'm from. And so I love that people from where I'm from, Lewis County, come and see it and love it. I would hate for them to come and see it and think, oh, they're making fun of rural people, because that was never the intent. But that first version, I think, had some of that going on in it.
That's interesting that you think that, because I also am from a town of less than 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were 700 when I was there, and there's like 580 now, so it's going the wrong way.
Yeah.
But whenever I do my comedy, I can make fun of my small town or small towns or rednecks or hillbilly, because I am one.
Yeah.
If I was at a Broadway show and I felt like somebody that wasn't me was making fun of me, I would feel a little weird about that too.
Yeah.
So the fact that you had that kind of sensibility.
Well, and there were things, because Robert Horn, our book writer, who really, he was leading the charge as far as the comedy and the tone. There were things that both Shane and I said to him were offensive, as coming from a smaller town. My town was 900, or just country. And he's from New York City, and he was so great about really listening to that, being empathetic, and making some changes.
That's really cool. At what point did you think this is over? Because I've had a couple projects where I'm like, it's over, and then in the end it worked itself out, or it was a TV show or something. But did you ever think it was done?
Yes, several times. And there were times I wanted it to be over, honestly, because I couldn't let go of it, nor could Shane and Robert. But I started to feel at times like, is this just this rabbit hole that is just taking and not giving? After Dallas, I thought it might be over. And then a couple of times after we restarted, I remember we did a reading, and Robert Horn said, I feel like if something doesn't happen from this reading, it's done. And something would happen.
From the reading?
Yes. Meaning an out-of-town theater wanting to take it. Because we went to Connecticut and
I'm thinking of reading as a table read. So what's a reading?
So it can be as small as a table read, or in this case, it would be where the actors, say we had 13 or 15 actors, they're sitting down, and then when it's their turn to speak, they stand up with a music stand that has their script and their music on it, so they don't memorize anything. But there's no choreography.
Who's watching this?
Potential producers, theater owners.
So it's like a showcase.
It's totally completely like a record label showcase. And I would say that the last time that I thought, it might be done, was right before we did our final out of town last fall in Salt Lake City at the Pioneer Theater. And our producer had secured a Broadway theater for us, and then it fell through. And we weren't going to Salt Lake with the intent of getting picked up, because that's not really where you go to get picked up. You go to Chicago or Seattle or, Boston to get the attention of a Broadway theater owner. So we were going to Salt Lake because it was under the radar. We could work out some kinks. And so when that theater fell through right before Salt Lake, I had hesitation to even go to Salt Lake because I thought, oh man, I know we're not going to get a Broadway theater coming out of Salt Lake. What are we doing? And then a couple days later, we had another theater. So that was the last time I thought this might fall apart.
Was there ever a moment where it was the total opposite after Salt Lake, where you go, oh, not only is this not falling apart, this is just clicking the right exact way?
I mean, I'm probably getting emotional talking about it. The first preview, because I realized I had prepared myself for it to fail, because, most do. And also in all those years, you're hearing way more criticism than you're hearing praise. You watch the show, be it in Salt Lake or be it a reading, in New York City, and everybody that's on the creative team, from the director to the choreographer to the music director to all of us to the lead producer, you get in a room and you talk about what's not right.
Just notes.
Yes. And so we had been talking about that in this last iteration for 5 years. So the first preview, when those people reacted the way they did, which was a mid first act standing ovation, standing ovation at the end.
What's a mid first act standing ovation? That's not interrupting the show, is
yes.
it? It is.
Yes.
Like at the end of a singing.
Yes.
Okay. You have to pardon my ignorance on Broadway
I love
shows.
this.
Okay.
Alex Newell, who won the Tony, sang a song called "Independently Owned," and it blows the roof off. And that got a standing ovation. It gets a standing ovation most nights. And so I kind of expected that, and especially with the first preview, because there would be friends and family. But I knew it felt different. And then when overnight, the man that worked the box office at the Nederlander Theater told me that in 35 years he'd never seen word of mouth that quick. We had no sales. And then overnight we were selling out. And so that's when I really knew. I mean, I think I cried for about 24 hours because I just couldn't believe it. And I also didn't realize how much I had prepared myself for it to not work.
Do you think part of that, because I made a little mental note when you said that a minute ago, I do the same thing with everything. I go to therapy. I try to get better at not having an expectation of failure, but we are in an industry where it's failure most of the time. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time it's failure.
Yes.
Because if you're creating, you're not spending all year creating a song and going, this is my one song. No, you're writing a bunch of songs. Some of those songs you're writing aren't even making it to the next level, which is it's just so much failure. And I'm super insecure. So do you think that is a bit based on being a songwriter in this town or how you grew up?
I think it's all of it. With that, I think it was really just 10 years of a lot of it getting kicked in the teeth.
But isn't that a songwriter too? I mean,
yes, except with that, you're at least getting little glimmers. You know, Shane and I would get the show to a point where we would love it. My goal was by the time we got to Broadway, I didn't want one cringe-worthy song. Because in every version, there was always one song that made us cringe, like, oh, let's just get through this one. We know it's not right. We don't know what it is yet. But, you know, when we would get the show where we loved it, we would have to make a big change. Like there would be a plot change that would maybe change 9 songs.
Wow. So because there's a full element, like a fundamental element of the show that's changed, you can't sing about the same thing because things aren't the same.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so basically what it was like, I think we wrote enough songs in those 10 years for 10 albums. So it was like you've been writing a record for 10 years. 9 of them have been scrapped. And keep in mind, 9 of those records, there are songs on those records that you actually think are better than some of what's on this record that's about to come out. And so I think it was just that. And I also think we were such underdogs. You know, people called us the Corn Musical, which was great. It worked for us. That nobody took us seriously. And so I think there was that element too. And I had always, honestly, I would always tell people, and I did believe this and still believe it, I said we're either going to be a massive hit or a massive flop. It won't be in between. I'm betting on the hit or I wouldn't still be in it. But I think that there was more of me that thought it might flop than I realized. And it probably is all those things.
Walk me through, because I was just looking at a picture and it just happened to pop up before you walked in. So that's where my mind was before we talk about your music. But walk me through the quick plot of Shucked.
Okay, so Cobb County is a county or a town that's surrounded by corn. No one's ever left. No one's ever come to it. The only way you can live in Cobb County is if you're born there. The corn starts to die, and that's their only way of life. So they don't know any other way. Nobody wants to leave. Nobody wants to let anybody in. But there's one girl, Maisie, who's brave enough to leave and knows that the only way they're going to survive is to leave and get help. So her grandpa doesn't want her to go. Her cousin doesn't want her to go. Her fiance doesn't want her to go. She goes anyway. She goes to the big city of Tampa, where she sees a sign for a corn doctor. And thinks, ooh, my problems are solved. She walks into the corn doctor's office, who's actually a podiatrist, but he's also a con man. And she tells him there's something wrong with my corn, and she pulls out an ear of moldy corn. He laughs and says, oh, I think you're mistaken. And she's like, no, you got to help me. If you don't help me, my whole town will perish. And a bracelet falls off of her wrist, and he sees it and notices this unique stone that is under her grandpa's house. And he knows that those stones are worth something. And so he pretends to be a vegetable corn doctor. And she takes him back to Cobb County. And he comes back, and everybody's kind of wary of him, but then they embrace him. And maybe he's not such a bad guy after all, once he feels the love of this community. And, it makes her fiance and her break up, but in the end, I don't want to give
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Okay.
Because now I want to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's really cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is a process, 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a relationship. Like there's good times and bad times. You didn't think it was going to make it at some point, and then at the end.
And Shane McAnally and I have worked on so many things, but this musical really, it's bonded us for life, because there were some bad times, and there were a lot of good times, but in 10 years you live a lot of life. And he and I went through a lot together on it, as well as Robert Horn, who is they're both like my brothers. And we just, we're going to do another one.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't quite know what it is yet. We're interviewing some potential ideas, but the three of us are a great team, and some of that is that we can make it through some tough times.
What's the most lasting standing ovation that you've ever gotten?
Me,
performing, singing. I don't know, that's a question that I ask often, but whenever I hear you sing, I feel like my guts are moving a little bit.
Oh,
I think,
thank you.
Because of how you are as a songwriter and also your voice.
Well, I would say I have two answers, because I would say in some ways Shucked is that, because what I love about that experience is I forget that I wrote the songs.
Really?
And so when people start to stand up, and I start to stand up too, I'm like, oh wow, I'm standing up for me here. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
But man, lasting standing ovation. Anytime there's a standing ovation, I love it. A lot of times when I do something just me and my guitar, it's fresh in my mind right now, but I'm out right now with Mary Chapin Carpenter, who's a big musical hero of mine. And the other night I was playing, and I have a song called Buried on my most recent record, and I play it in the middle of the show, and I got a partial standing ovation for that in the middle of the set.
That's like the first act.
Yeah.
You got one of those at your show.
That really hit me. Anytime there's a standing ovation, I love it. And I kind of love it more when I'm out in support of someone than when it's me that's the headline.
You won them over when they didn't really expect you to win them over.
You come out and they don't, they that's their time to go to the bathroom or get a drink or whatever. And when you can hold them long enough that by the time you're coming off stage, they've become a fan enough to stand up, it's pretty huge.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. If your support, because the audience, they may like you, but most of them didn't go to see whomever the support is.
Yeah.
Not you or anybody. It's
Exactly.
almost never do I go, I wonder who the support act is for Ben Rector.
Yes.
So, yeah, that would be really, I'd have some real confidence.
If it's my show and they don't stand up, I feel like I've failed.
It's a drastic difference in the two shows.
Yeah.
Do you have confidence in yourself generally?
Yeah, I have good core confidence, I have insecurities, just like everybody, but I'm lucky, and I guess it was my parents, in that I genuinely like myself for the most part. But I think the nature of what we do makes it hard to be confident sometimes. But I have to just walk out and pretend I'm confident. I'm sure you do the same
All the
thing.
time. Yeah, I'm never confident.
Yeah.
I'm only confident once I'm shown that I should have been confident 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like I was already faking it, but now I'm getting some feedback that it's good. So Still confident, but I really wasn't 15 minutes ago.
But you know, the other thing is, I don't know anybody who's really great who doesn't struggle with that a little bit.
I have crazy imposter syndrome, or I talk to my wife, and if I'm like, hey, I need to go do this show, or I need to do this TV show or whatever, she's like, why, you don't even really want to do it? I'm like, but if I lose momentum, I'll never get it back. Like, I have this absolute fear of, if I ever slow down, that I don't really have the skills or the talent to catch back up to where I am now. And if that's imposter syndrome or if it's just reality, I don't know, but I struggle with that, with taking breaks because of that. I don't know that I'm very confident in a certain skill set, but I wonder, like, I know what I'm driven from, fear. Like, I'm driven from a small town fear. I'm creative because of similar situations. It was kind of my way out. Where did yours come from?
Well, definitely, like, creativity.
Just creativity and drive, and the artist part of you.
My drive definitely came from my dad. My dad was maybe the most driven person I've ever known. Whatever it was, my grandma used to say it was a good thing my dad didn't drink or smoke, because he would have been a terrible alcoholic or a chain smoker. Like, whatever it was all the way. I remember when I was getting out of high school, I wanted to get into this. It was called the STP, Seattle to Portland bike ride. It was 195 miles. And I was going to school the next year on a basketball scholarship and needed a way to stay in shape. So I saw that as the way. And so I started training for it. One of my high school basketball coach was going to do it with me, and then he had to have a hip replacement. So 2 weeks before, I'm stuck without a riding partner. And my dad said he would do it with me.
2 weeks before?
2 weeks before.
No training?
No training. And my dad was one of these people. My dad was in good shape, but, you know, it's different. And so we did the ride. We did it in 2 days. I remember when we got done, my dad said, I'm never getting on a bike again. That was on Sunday. By Wednesday, my dad had bought a racing bike. The next year, he did it in a pace line in 8 hours. That was my dad. So I definitely got drive from him.
Do you have, because I've never had a drink, and I don't smoke. I can't, because I'll do it all. Like your grandma would say about your dad. I would be the greatest drinker of all time.
Yeah.
I would dominate it.
Yes.
It'd be amazing. But I've never had a single drink, because I know I get obsessed or even addicted to everything. And I have those qualities throughout my family. A lot of my family members have died from addiction. So, but I kind of replace addiction with an addiction to drive. And sometimes it's easily to get confused, even to myself, on what they are. Like, is it a drive, or am I addicted to work, you know, as I try to find like some sort of worth? Your dad set a great example for you on drive. Do you have addictive quality? Is it an addictive quality type thing?
Well, you know, I believe we're all kind of addicts. We just get addicted to the healthy things or not. I mean, I can definitely be addicted, like, to food. I mean, I wish it was a sexier addiction, but
I have no moderation. Jen.
Yeah.
Like, none.
Yeah, it's like I'm either eating seriously clean, or I'm Postmating 2 pints of Jenny's ice cream, and the next day I'm like, where did those go? You know, like, there's no moderation. I'm that way too. I think I'm pretty driven. It's a competitive thing. I wish it wasn't as competitive. I have friends who are artists, and they just love music, and, you know, I mean, I love music and I love creating, but I also want to win. Sometimes I wish I didn't have that as much.
I'm horribly competitive.
Yeah.
Again, but all mine's from insecurities.
Yeah.
It sounds like yours was a great example.
Yes.
And then kind of was some of it to kind of be like or with your dad, do you think?
Yeah. Yes. And I lost my dad young. I was 20, not as young as some people, but I was 25. And those really young years of my life, I was really into sports, and I think that was because of my dad. And I really feel lucky that was my passion then, because we were close because of that. We would have been close anyway, but I've been lucky enough to be. My parents were great parents, and then as I've gotten older, my mom's also a great friend. You know, she's always my mom, but I feel lucky that I had that athletic drive young, because I wasn't going to have my dad a long time. My mom was musical, and so as I got older, music sort of became the thing, and that brought her and I even closer.
Was music at all a part of your life though? Like 13?
Yes.
It was.
It was. I started playing guitar when I was 9, and I always just assumed everybody's mom played piano, and because my mom did those things. Like if we liked a song, my mom could hammer it out on the piano. I was in the Music Man. That was my first music thing. I was Amaryllis in the Music Man. And so after that, I started like taking voice lessons and got more into guitar, but it would go in and out because of sports. But once I got out of high school, music took the place of what sports was. That then became my sport.
The thing you worked at?
Yes.
Set goals?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's hard to kind of ravel yourself from the competitive mindset of sports. Well, now nothing.
Right.
So it's, again, when I was talking about it, for me, I have to like replace addictions. Mm-hmm. And not that it was an addiction, but if you were always pushing toward this sports goal and now you have no goal, I can see where you could be lost a little bit or no direction.
Yeah, when I first quit playing basketball, because I went to college on a basketball scholarship, and I really was burnt out by then.
Was that your identity too, the basketball player?
Totally. I thought that was why people liked me. I still, I talked about this to a therapist one time. I said, I always felt like I needed something to hook somebody in. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, my longest friend in life is a girl named Rachel. I said, Rachel didn't have to do anything. Like, everybody just loved Rachel. I said, I had to be like good in sports and then good in music to hook people in. And she's like, no, that's what you need to hook you in, to liking you. And I think that's probably true. But yeah, my identity was very wrapped up in, when I quit playing basketball, I had probably 6 months of who am I? And then I started getting really back into music, and then that became my identity. I wish I didn't have so much wrapped in it, but I just do. And if for some reason this went away, it'd be something else.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I struggle with that a lot, separating like who I real life am and who I am, and sometimes I get confused. I'm lucky I have a wife now that will go, hey, yo, this is, there are priorities, and I get this is a priority of yours, and it's important, but let's evaluate the real human and then the career person.
That's tough.
And so it was tough for me to even kind of understand that I have to separate those, because I was on my own until 39. I mean, I never had a serious girlfriend. I had girlfriends, but none of them really mattered. Then I met her, and then it was like a reality pill, and it hurt. It hurt to swallow sometimes when you start to get that like, oh. So that's been difficult for me. Do you have anybody for you that's like, okay, here's the deal. You're kind of off a little. You're kind of off track a little bit personally. Can Shane do that?
Well, I mean, I probably do that for him.
Absolutely. So I would assume, is it?
Yeah. No, we're good for each other that way. He and I are like, soulmates in a lot of ways.
Where you can get mad at them, but it doesn't mean you're not going to be their friend anymore. I mean, I think that's a point in a relationship you're just bonded. We're
family, and totally, like, he and I really do lean on each other. I can tell him really, really things I'm super insecure about, and him for me. And we can kind of ground each other. And he's really been great lately at balance, like he's amazing for me to watch. He's a great dad. His kids are a real priority, he's spending a lot of time out in Santa Barbara now because that's where he's happiest. That's where his sobriety's easiest. And that's inspiring to me. I don't struggle with the same things. I definitely do struggle with having my identity all wrapped up in this, though. That's a big one.
Your album, I also say rare, you've self-titled this project, and usually that happens the very first. It's like, hello, I'm this person. I've self-titled it. I've been a fan for years, and now it's self-titled. I was a little confused. I'm like, am I looking at the wrong record here? So why? We talk about identity. Why do that here?
So funny story, and then a real story. But so when Brandie Carlie approached me about, hey, I'd really like to make a record on you, she said, I see it as your return to the Northwest. And that was intriguing to me. And I was talking to Jessie Jo Dillon, who's a great friend and collaborator, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do on this record. And I said, Brandie Carlie has been talking to me about potentially working with her, and Jesse said, what do you like about that? And I said, well, one of the things she said that really intrigues me most is that she sees it as my return to the Northwest. And Jesse says, wow, B, we should go up to the Northwest and write some songs. And so we did. And one of those was a song called Northwest that's on this record. And so I then had this massive idea of, we're going to call this record Northwest. And I had all the artwork in my head. But every time I would say that to somebody, they would say, well, you know, that's Kim and Kanye's kid, right? Northwest.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yes. And I hadn't thought of that. And so then I got off of that and I was like, what am I going to call this? And it just, the process of making this was there was a lot of challenge in it. And I felt by the end of it, there wasn't anything else I wanted to call it but Brandy Clark. And since I hadn't self-titled something, it worked.
Why Brandie Carlie, as in what about her as a producer? I love her music. She's always been super cool to me. Mm-hmm. Wonderful freaking singer. Like, I tell her she's the Mount Rushmore.
She is.
But as a producer, I don't know that part of her.
I didn't either. It was a leap of faith, And what really drew me to her was her confidence. She was so confident that she should make this record. And
did you already want to make a record? And did you talk to her? Like, you said she came. I was like, hey, I want to make a record on you. Did she just message you? Or?
No, what started was when we were in the pandemic, and I had made Your Life is a Record with Jay Joyce, who I've loved working with, genius producer. The label wanted to waterfall it. They wanted to put out a few more songs, and Jay's schedule didn't line up to do it. And so I just thought, well, we're not going to be able to waterfall it. And then Tracy Gershon said to me, have you ever thought about doing a couple of songs with Brandie Carlie? And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be cool. Let's try it. It felt very like an easy thing. It wasn't like it was a whole album. And so we cut 2 songs and tacked them onto Your Life is a Record. One of them was nominated for a Grammy. And the way it started with her producing a whole record was she said that when we didn't win that Grammy, that she looked over and she said I looked so sad. Now, I don't remember feeling particularly sad, but I'm glad I did because it spurred her to say, she goes, hey, buddy, I want to make a whole record on you. That was how it started. I didn't know how serious she was. But when her and I sat down and, she talked to me about how passionate she was about it and how she felt like there was a part of me that she could get on record that no one else could. And I think it is because she's such a great singer. I always think a producer leads with their instrument. If they were a guitar player first, that's their entry point. For her, she's a singer, so that's her entry point. And so she can ask things of an artist vocally that other producers can't.
Does she give example? If she's like, I haven't been in the studio with you, but does she go like, ooh? Does she do like examples of what she wants you to try to chase?
Well, yeah. I mean, she would sing it to you like, hey, I know you can do this.
So she would push you.
Yes.
By showing you what she wanted to push you to.
Yes.
Was there ever a moment where you're like, Brandy, I can't do that, but then you did because she just kind of?
No, because I didn't want to say I couldn't. And also the other way she would push is, I love something perfect, and she'd push for flawed things. Like, no, leave that vocal alone. That's that. Sure, you might be able to sing it better, but you can't sing it truer. Like, don't do it again. She's great that way, and also great at asking, okay, is this really what you want to say? Is this really what you mean here? In a way that I think probably only another artist that can do. That's her gift as a producer, is that she's an artist.
Sounds like you have to trust, well, a producer, but her a lot in the situation in ways that she's challenging you.
Totally.
Like,
and yeah.
She's like, do you want to say it like this? If I ain't the right person asking me that, I'm like, what do you mean? You don't tell me how I want to say it.
Oh, well, my ego definitely got bruised in the beginning. And I realized the first day we were in the studio together was kind of a tough day because, it was the day after the CMAs, and I had been part of that Lindyville performance, and we were recording in LA, well, actually Malibu at Shangri-La, which was a really amazing experience, Rick Rubin's studio. And she came in hot, and I don't know if I was just tired from having just flown in there from here, but I definitely the first day thought, wow, is this going to work? And some of that, I think, was that at that point I wasn't looking at Brandie as a producer. I was looking at her as another artist. And the next morning we met and really talked it out, and I just said, Brandie, I'm just going to trust you. I'm going to do it your way on some of these things. And after that happened, it was like the heavens opened. And I think it was mostly me, just giving her that rope that I was maybe hanging on to a little too tight.
Are you a control freak?
No, not really. I'm sure about certain things, but...
Just not generally across the board?
Yeah, no, I'm not a control freak about most things.
Are you a perfectionist?
Yes, but I think perfect is different for everybody. I have my idea of what the perfect song is. And a lot of that's based on being here and being in writing rooms for 20 plus years and the idea of the craft of songwriting. I think that's part of why her and I were a great marriage on this, because she hasn't done that. She likes things a little messier. And so I think between the two, we ended in a spot that I was really happy with.
What is her producing style? I can just see a producer on the other side of the glass pushing the button, doing the talk through. Okay, do this. Or was she in the vocal booth? What is she like?
Oh, she's in it. Yeah. She's always playing something, be it guitar, piano, even if it's not ultimately in the track, which most times it is. No, she's right in the middle of it. I think to make sure it feels right. Because Brandie is somebody, and this was another thing that drew me to her when we did those first two songs. She's all gut instinct. And so I think to be that, you have to be in it and be feeling it.
Why I like you as a songwriter is your stuff always feels personal. Even if I can't identify what feels so personal about it to you, I can always feel something personal about it with me.
Oh, I love that.
I feel like that's why I'm such a big fan of your music, is that it is very personal. But sometimes if I can't put my finger on exactly what you're talking about personal to you, I can always associate it with something to me. Mm-hmm. With so much of your music. That being said, these songs feel even more personal, honestly, than stuff that I've heard before. One, was that purposeful? Did you push yourself to do that? And then two, is there ever a point where you're like, man, is this too personal where no one's going to relate to it?
Yeah, both things. And I got to say that first, the first thing I really do attribute to Brandie, because when she said, "Are you sure you want to say this?" She asked me to change lyrics that didn't. There was a line in Buried. It said, "I'll read Lonesome Dove. I'll start doing yoga. It takes some trippy drug, makes me forget I even know you." And she's like, "I don't like that yoga line. That bugged me bad." I said, "Why don't you like that yoga line?" And she goes, "Because I just don't even think you do yoga." I said, "Well, I don't." And she said, "Well, why are you putting it in this song that everything else is, So we changed it. So a lot of that, there were little things like that made things, this much more personal. And I never realized when I'm writing songs, because I'm always writing songs, I just never know. Sometimes they're for me, sometimes they're for someone else. And there were Lenny Warnaker at Warner is the first person who pointed out just how personal they were. And he said, "Man, these songs, I thought Your Life is a Record was really personal, but these are even more personal." And I said, "Oh, really? I can't imagine that they'd be more personal than that." And he said, "Well, yeah, Dear Insecurity, you're talking about you." He said, "You've written songs that are personal about relationships or situations, but on this record, you have songs that are about you and your deep feelings." And that got a little scary. And then a song like She Smoked in the House, I thought that was way too personal. I wrote that.
This is about your grandma?
Yeah. I thought I wrote that just because I was missing my grandma. It was a way to be with my grandma, to write that. I turned it in because I turned everything in. I did not expect one person to say, "Oh, you should record this," and everyone did.
Wow.
Yeah, and now that I'm out playing it and the record's out, it's one I don't think I could get away with not playing it live.
I love. My grandma adopted me for a long time, so that song I was drawn to. That's why I knew when you said the song is about you. But I mean, that is one too that I heard and was like, wow, this is so easily such a great song. It's just funny to think how we all feel about things that we make in the moment we make them, and how that can change. Because again, if you're writing because you're feeling a certain way, but going, I don't think really this. I hear it and go, how could this not be a thing?
Yeah, I think I just being too close to it, but it's also a good reminder of, write what you love and what you know, and other people will love it and know it. Like you hear your grandma in it. There are people that have their grandma was nothing like my grandma. Like they'll say, my grandma didn't smoke, but man, that part about cutting the mold off cantaloupe and cheese, that was my grandma. So it's just that song is a great reminder to me to write what matters.
So how would you be inspired by Forrest Gump?
So, on a writing retreat, Jimmy Robbins, Jesse Joe Dillon, and we were watching Forrest Gump the first night when we were there. We had written something else that day, and there's that scene where Jenny's throwing rocks at the house she grew up in, and Forrest says, sometimes there just ain't enough rocks. And Jesse Joe actually said, I've always wanted to write that.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
The title. But you were literally watching Forrest Gump whenever it came up. Do you ever go, maybe we don't tell anybody we wrote this about Forrest Gump? Or are you just like, we got to let everybody know? Because I love that it's Forrest Gump.
Yeah, I mean, I probably tell too much. It'd probably be a better story if I made something else up. But that's just the truth about that one.
Your mom, you mentioned her earlier, to play with your mom. And to be in a band with your mom.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was great. And even greater looking back on it, because once again, as a kid, it was just like, I kind of thought that's what everybody did. But I realized just how special that is. And my mom is so responsible for so much of the music I love. And for, my parents, they sacrificed for us. Like, we lived in a single wide trailer that they remodeled into more of the size of a double wide when we got older. But I think about all the things we got inside of that trailer. Like, we got to do music lessons. We got to play whatever sports we wanted. And they didn't drive, I'm sure they wish they would, or at the time maybe they wanted to drive a different car, but it was more important for me to play guitar and my brother to play violin if that's what we wanted. So we were really lucky. And they took us, even though we grew up in a really small area, they took us to a lot of things like in Seattle and Tacoma. I remember, going to the Puyallup Fair and seeing Ronnie Millsap. That was the first concert I saw. They took us to the Perfect 10 tour, which was when Mary Lou Retton and all the gymnasts from the 1984 Olympic team I think they were in Seattle. We got to do things like that. They'd take us to folk life festivals and we'd see all this music and all these different instruments. And, just they were great parents in a lot of ways. And one of the bigger ways was just culturally, they exposed us to a lot.
When you moved to Nashville, because you went to Belmont?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, did you move from Washington State to Belmont?
I did.
That's a significant move.
Yeah.
And so was it, I'm going to do music, I need to go to where the music is, and this is the school?
So, well, funny story. Yes, I wanted to do music, and it was also really important to me to finish college for some reason. When I was paying off my student loans into my 30s, I was like, why did I do this? But I had seen on Crook and Chase that Trisha Yearwood went to Belmont. And so that made me want to go to Belmont. And I'm still glad I went. But it was, when I moved here, I felt like I had moved to a foreign country. It was so different. Even
in what ways stuck out to you most? Because I know the area where you're from.
Yeah.
I tour a lot. So I feel like that's not the same. But if there were a group of people that were similar but not the same, it would be people from the Northwest. We're on the air, like rural Portland, rural Seattle. Like they're just real honest people. Real honest people, I feel mostly.
Yes. Oh.
Like people here.
I think just geographically, like one of my favorite things when I moved here, and I used to do this, and I don't know why I thought this was fun, was how fast you could get to other states. I would get in my car and just drive to Alabama or just drive to Kentucky. Like, because where I was from in Washington, it took you a day to get across the state. So that was different. Like, you could be so many places so quick.
I'm like that with Europe.
Yes.
Like, you can go to a country.
Yes. Same thing.
I'm like, Ireland's the size of Iowa?
Yes.
I can just be over and...
Yes.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So that was very different. The fact that they were interstates and not freeways, that felt just... Now when I go home and I say interstate, people look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, it's I-5. You know, that's what it means, Interstate 5. And then religion. You know, where I'm from, it's not that people aren't religious, but it's not so much in the culture. You know, when I got here, I felt like there was a church on every corner. And then going to Belmont, I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was a Baptist university. And so that was a different thing to me, to take Bible classes. And so those were the major differences. And then the weather. You know, humidity. I didn't know what humidity was when I moved here.
Boy, welcome.
Yeah.
It freaking sucks.
I actually, you know what's so funny though? I was telling somebody the other day that was talking about how much they hate humidity. I said, I don't. And I was like, and you know why? Because when I moved here, my grandma said to me, you're going to love it there, but you're going to hate the humidity. And I just decided I'm not going to hate it. And so my mom and I landed and it was super humid. We got here in August. And I said, I just love this humidity.
I don't know how it works. Yeah. I just love mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Never worked for me. I hate mayonnaise.
Well, no, I don't like mayonnaise either. We have that in common.
Maybe if you just said that,
yeah.
you know. So with this record, and just to go back to it here, again, I've heard so many songs that you have written and that you have sang and that you have written and other people have sang. On this record specifically that you're singing, which of these songs did you finish and go, oh man, I got like the tingles. That's it. That felt like, what's the most...
Dear Insecurity.
Yeah. For
sure. Well, and Up Above the Clouds. Those two, I knew the day that those were written, you know. And Dear Insecurity, we made some changes on that in the studio to make it even more my insecurities than it already was. But both of those I knew, like, oh, this is something, like, and this is something I want for me. I knew that right away.
What are you doing for fun? It's a lot. You have a lot going on professionally, and this is what people ask me. They're like, "You look like you're driving yourself." What are you doing at all to kind of hang out?
That. You know, I mean, well, and I want to say something about you really quick because I always say this to other people.
Okay.
You are so good, and it's because you share your vulnerabilities. You know, like people would talk about Barbara Walters. They'd be like, "Man, everybody cries in Barbara Walters." I think you're as good as Barbara Walters in your own way, and it's because you talk about yourself. Like when you know, like you're talking about, oh, I'm a workaholic. You didn't say that, but it's your gift as an interviewer. I just wanted to say that. Well, you can leave that or cut that out.
My gift is not accepting compliments. I just feel awkward, but I thank you. That's very kind of you. From you, that means a whole lot. So thank you.
It's true. I was telling everybody that I listen to this podcast, and if I really like somebody, I like them more. And if I kind of don't like somebody, and I listen to your podcast and I still don't like them, I know. Okay, my instinct's right. Because the real person's going to come out.
You're right. It is an hour. It is intense. It is, and intensity maybe isn't the word, but it is, it's very intimate. Because here we are, you and me. And luckily I know you.
Yeah.
But it's just me and you. We only have each other to depend on. Mm-hmm. If one of us stops talking, or if I ask a stupid question, I need you to bail me out and give me an answer that makes me look halfway decent. Or if you, I mean, it's a relationship.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it is anybody that I've ever interviewed for a long period of time, their real self comes out eventually. Yeah,
you get to it. I think it's because you're real self. You're not afraid to talk about your frailties, which is, that gets other people talking about theirs. I really noticed it. A friend of mine and one of my favorite people is Sunny Sweeney. When I heard her podcast with you, I called her or I texted her and just was like, oh my God, this was so great.
She was great. She was so great.
Oh, she's awesome. So for fun, and you were asking me that and I got off track. I love sports still. You know, I mean, I'm so excited football's starting. College football will be. I know you're a big Razorback fan.
Do you have a team?
UT.
What, Tennessee?
I chose that when I moved here, and here was why. I moved here, and one of the places I would go was North Carolina, which was further, but I had friends there, still there. And when I would drive, I had never seen college. I mean, I always loved college football, but it's not like it is here anywhere else.
Right.
And so I'd be driving from here over to North Carolina. The whole way to Knoxville, I would see these orange and white pom-poms out of cars, and I just thought, you know what? I want them to be my team. I'm a Tennessean now, and that's it for me. Now, I still root for the Washington Huskies. You know, it'd be tough for me if the Huskies were playing UT. But I love college football. I love college basketball.
Yeah, me too.
I love track. I was terrible in track and field myself.
You love track? You like to watch track?
Oh, if there's a track meet on, I'm watching it.
Where's the track meet on?
There are some of those like higher sports channels, you know, like
Bally's 12, 19?
Yes, like
wow.
Every once in a while,
I bet you love the Olympics then.
Love the Olympics. In fact, when they started alternating it, where you get the Olympics every 2 years instead of just every 4, that was a red letter day in my life, because I used to wait all those 4 years for the Olympics, and now you only have to wait 2. It's great.
And where you come from, I guess you guys had winter too.
Yes, not a harsh winter.
Enough winter though to understand some of the winter sports.
Oh yes,
because we don't. I mean, I'm from
Right.
Arkansas. I don't know anything about skiing.
Yes, no, and I didn't know them, but like my dad knew people who were Olympic skiers. So that and other people, you know, I went to school with so and so who was an Olympic skier, or ice skaters. Tonya Harding, that was a big thing my senior year in high school, was the whole Tonya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan thing, and that
Jeff
was
Gillooly
yes
whacking the knee of Kerrigan.
Yeah, because Tonya Harding would train at, I think it was the Clackamas Town Center, which was in Oregon, where I grew up. Going to Portland was as close as going to Seattle, and I remember I wanted to go watch her practice, and we didn't do that, but that was big news around where I was from.
Heck yeah, that's like a hometown story that goes national.
Yes, yeah.
That's the fact that I still remember Jeff Gillooly's name.
Yes,
that's wild. Did you ever see I, Tonya?
I did.
What'd you think about it?
Loved it.
Me too. I thought she did such a good job
She
as Tonya
did.
Harding.
And then the woman who played her mom.
She was also in that show, Mike, with
Moms?
Yes, Moms with
Allison Janney.
That's
yes,
it.
Allison
Janney.
Oh,
she's awesome.
Yes, just great.
Did you see Barbie?
I did.
Did you like it?
I liked it. I didn't love it as much as everyone else.
Maybe that was the problem. You heard too many people say they loved it.
Might have been. I mean, or maybe I saw it on the wrong day. I don't know. I was so hyped up for it. You know, the movie that like I wasn't hyped up for, that's been my favorite movie in several years, was Top Gun Maverick.
I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Everybody's told me it's so good. There's no way it can meet the expectation, so I've purposefully not watched it because there's no way it can be as good as everybody says.
It's pretty great. And I even said to a friend of mine that was talking about Barbie, I said, I really liked it. I said, I think I thought it was going to be how I felt about Top Gun. And it wasn't. I mean, it's great though. I think it's a real mother-daughter thing. Everybody I know who really, or like Shane, he took his daughter and he loved it. I think there's something about having a daughter and taking your daughter to that movie.
Dang, I loved it. I was emotional watching it.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you'll just be a good dad when you have a daughter.
I guess. My wife tells me I'm the most feminist dude that she knows, as like a compliment, sometimes a little too much. And I was just like, oh, yeah, man, we women, we're not even understood. It's unfair. And she's like, okay, relax.
Yeah.
But I really like Barbie. Mike, you like Barbie, huh? I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
See, I love that.
I couldn't get enough of it.
I mean, I liked it. I just wasn't, I know people who cried and, I didn't have that experience.
But that's why I don't watch Top Gun, because I don't think it can ever meet what everybody says it is. And not in a bad way. I'm sure it's awesome.
See, and when I saw Top Gun, I just watched it on a plane because I thought, well, there's nothing else. And then I'm bawling. I'm like, because I loved the original, but it just hit all the feels for me. But it's because I didn't have any expectation.
That's usually the best, when you have no expectation. You watch TV at all? Do you watch any shows?
I do.
Have you seen Hijack on Apple Plus yet?
No.
With Idris Elba.
Oh, I love him.
Me too. and it's like a plane that gets hijacked, and and when he gives some sort of credibility to anything. Like if he's in it, you're
Yes.
like, all right.
Just that voice.
Just the fact that he lends any of himself to
Yes.
it. We finished that. We binged that. It was really, really good. A little cheesy at very first, but then they got off the cheese, and it was super good. We're looking for a show now. That's why I asked you this, and we'll kind of end with this. Give me something that you've seen that you were just so motivated to get back to.
Okay. Well, there's something I started last night that I thought was great, which is Painkiller on Netflix.
Okay, is that about the
It's about
opioids?
yes.
Is it? We thought about it. We were looking at things to watch.
I was super tired, so I couldn't watch more than one episode, but I loved it. I'm trying to think of something else.
We started watching Robin Big last night because we were just like, well, we're not going to get anything super deep. So we started watching old Robin Big for like 15 minutes.
Okay, I love Winning Time.
Oh, it's awesome, and it's back.
Yes, that's a
It's
show.
the best.
And I love that, you know what, I love that you can't stream it. I love that you have to wait for it because I look forward to it on Sunday nights. Magic Johnson's my favorite basketball player of all time. So, in fact, I'll get into discussions with my godson, and he'll say, he calls me Grandy. Grandy thinks Magic Johnson's the greatest basketball player of all time. I said, no, he's my favorite. I didn't say he was the greatest. I think Michael Jordan's the greatest, but Magic is my favorite. I love.
Why Magic?
I think it was his charisma. He's one of those, I rarely get starstruck. If I met him, I would cry.
You never met him?
Never met him. I'm sure I would cry. I remember I cried when I found out he had HIV. I was at a junior high football game, and this kid that was in my class told me. And I've loved him. Once again, I think it was the charisma.
Were you a point guard?
No, I was a shooting guard. But I went to a tiny school. Any other school, I would have had to have been a point guard, and I wouldn't have been quick enough. So,
I wondered if that was why the Magic, if you love Magic, he was also a guard, or if it just was the charisma.
I think it was his charisma. And he was such a great player, too, but just everything about him.
Well, we've done an hour. I don't want to keep you, but I want everybody, we talked about it before you got here. Listen, don't be confused. It's not her first album ever. Just because it's called Brandy Clark, it is not her intro to the world. It's really good. I knew I was going to love it.
Thank you.
I'm glad I didn't Top Gun it and know I was going to love it, so then I didn't listen to it because but it's just, it's so good. But
Thank you, Bobby.
I think everything you do is so good, but I'm just a massive fan, and sometimes, this is not you, but sometimes I've had favorite artists. And I've appreciated maybe different directions they've taken, but it didn't always. I didn't always love it with like my sonic sensibilities. We'll call it that. And I worry about that at times whenever I get so hyped that one of my favorite people are going to release something, and then when it is what I like, I'm like, oh, thank God. And this was, I was like, oh, thank God when I heard it.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah. Well, even if it had been totally different, I'd been like, I respect it. You're trying,
Yeah.
but I just loved it. I just loved it, and it made me think of my grandma. And like I said, there were just times it just felt even more personal. And I didn't know if that was if you felt like that was the case too.
Yeah, that's probably part of why it was why it was challenging at times, and to be challenged by someone in Brandie Carlie who won't take anything less than real personal.
Yeah. I'm never letting her produce my album. Never doing an album. I'm never letting her produce it either. Great to see you.
You too.
Everybody, please stream, love. It's great. It's been out. Wait, May, June, July, 3 months.
Yeah.
Dang, it's already been out 3 months.
3 months. Yeah.
And Shucked. Now I have to go see it.
Yeah. I think you'll like.
That's
Shucked.
super cool. And
Yeah.
are you like making a bunch of money off Shucked?
Well, not yet, but I think we will.
Is it like a song? I guess my question is not how much money. Is it like a song when it goes top 5, number 1? It takes a while for the residuals to come in, but you know it's coming.
Yeah, we know it's coming, and when it really starts to pay off is when it tours, and they've booked a national tour.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
That's
so
cool.
and that's one of those that'll be an evergreen sort of thing, and it's you'll see it, you'll notice it when you see it. It's for Broadway, it's a very inexpensive show. There's nothing automated, and so every community college, high school in America will be able to do it. Now they'll have to clean up some of the humor, but I know that they'll
Last
do
question.
that.
I want to keep. I could do this for 4 hours, Brandy.
Okay.
Last question. Is there anything in Shucked that in 10 years ago, that might get me canceled, but right now it's funny?
No. At times there were. I mean, we really got lucky that it came out when it did and not sooner, because there were times where some of the humor was sexist. There was never anything racist in it, but definitely there was some sexist humor for a while. And well, maybe there were nothing racist. Maybe things that could have come across, and this is going to sound crazy because it was written by 3 gay people. There were a few little homophobic things that are gone, that were inside jokes, that were funny to us, but I think maybe would have gotten us canceled.
Okay, final last question. I've got a lot of last questions. Final last question. If, let's say, the actor who was playing the main character, Macy, her name was?
Yeah.
Let's say she's like, oh, I can't, my throat hurts. Because I always thought if I'm on an airplane and they're like, we need somebody to land us. Okay, I'll go do it. I don't know how to do it, but I can figure it out. But you know these songs. Could you go and play her role with 15 minutes notice?
I did it. So
Wait,
this
what?
is a great question. Yes. So we were in New York City, and it was after the show had opened, but before the Tonys. And so, that's when all the Tony voters are coming. They can't come before it officially opens. And so it was when all the smoke was happening in New York from Canada. And I just happened to be in New York doing radio at Warner Records. And our producer called me 3 times. I was in doing some things, and I thought, well, that's strange. I better take this call. So I stepped out, and it's 5:00, and he said, "Hey, where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm at Warner Records." And he said, "Well, all the Macy's have called out. Do you think that if you could do a concertized version of it?" Because Robert, the book writer, was there. He said, "Robert will read all the dialogue, and you sing the songs." And I said, "Sure, I can do it." And so 5:00, the curtains at 7:30, leave Warner, go down to the theater, run through it with the music director. He changed the keys he could, but he couldn't change all the keys. And so they sat Robert and I down on barrels, and then the whole cast was around us on barrels, but they got up and did their scenes. And so we did it. And I'll tell you what, it gave me mad respect for anyone who does it, because it looks way easier than it is. And I've even said, because we've had to recast that role just because our lead had to leave the show, and different names would come up of, oh, we could get this person to play it, like popular music people. And I would say, yeah, I don't think so. And everybody would look at me and say, well, yeah, they can sing that. I'm like, no, they can't. I've done it. If I can barely do it, this person you're talking about can't. Now there are some singers who definitely could do that and more, but it's a tough role.
What a great question about me. I'm glad I asked that, and then we're going to end it now. She said, great question. That we can't. I'm going to Seinfeld this thing and end at the top. You're the best.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, you're the best.
I'm
you guys,
as much of a fan of me.
No way possible. I'm obsessed, so no way possible. At the Brandy Clark, and you guys go check out the album if you haven't already. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.